Hi, I'm Davine Dial, manager at WPVM in Asheville. And the guest today is one of our show hosts that we are honored to have on our team here in Asheville, North Carolina. She made a huge mark in the world as a whistleblower. And the name of her show is the Empowered Whistleblower. And Dawn, are you loading that up to audio port?
You mean this recording?
No, your show.
Oh, I have one on there. I need to load more of them. Yes, I have a bunch.
Yeah. So she's got some good programming. So if you like what you hear here, she does a regular show each week that's half an hour. And I'm going to put in a plug for her for that because she does a very good show.
Okay.
And so
That's the Empowered Whistleblower?
the Empowered Whistleblower.
Okay. And I'm just going to put a side note. We are recording the main presentation like we did last time, and then we'll shut off the recording for group discussion. So, okay.
Okay, so with that, the Dawn's credentials were included in the invitation. So that covers a lot of what she's doing and what she's about. And it's pretty impressive. So Dawn, thank you for coming and have at it.
Okay. Well, first a shout out to Davine Dial and her husband Herb, because I've been with them both with WPVM LP FM 103.7 since last August. As I mentioned earlier, I was a podcaster. And so the show is called The Empowered Whistleblower, and I get lots of really curious people. The show is not to make people a whistleblower. It's my brand, and it's why I am doing the work that I do. I'm a two-time successful whistleblower, once in the Air Force, and I won't get into a long story, and the second time against the second largest federal agency in the United States. And so I've been through a lot of traumatic events, which has led me to do the work that I've been doing for the last 8 or 9 years with great success. So I thought I would cover these areas, and then when I'm done, I will entertain any questions that I can answer. And I realize sometimes questions are very specific and they may be deeply personal or even embarrassing. And I've heard everything because I've been in HR and employee labor relations over 30 years. And there's really not too many things I don't know about or I haven't heard about. So what I'd like to talk first about is a little story about a company that was almost destroyed by harassment. And then I want to talk about some legal resources that are affordable to people, about employee handbook or guideline, whatever you want to call it. Also about a non-disclosure agreement, and I'll get more into this, and agreements that you make with it could be employees, it could be contractors, volunteers, and also about forced arbitration, which I'll explain. And then last, the importance of how you document everything, and then wrap it up with questions. So everybody loves a good story. So let me just tell you that one of the companies that I worked for not too long ago contacted me. They knew my background, and they were a small company, and they brought in one female who became their worst nightmare. And the female, I won't say names or companies, but that person become a living nightmare, texting the owner of the company at 10 o'clock at night, bullying, harassing the rest of the people. And the owner said to me, I haven't had a good night's sleep in 6 months. So maybe some of this sounds familiar to you because every company or nonprofit or federal agency deals with some kind of incivility. So I was brought in to, as I call it, to clean house, and did a mediation, realized this person wasn't going to change. And I taught the company owner how to properly document everything so that the girl, when we released her, fired her, because that's the right way to say it, was done properly, respectfully, and all the T's were crossed and the I's were dotted so that she couldn't also run out and take all this personal intelligence, property intelligence of what she learned in the company and use it against a person. So whatever issues that you might be having, and when I say workplace, please, assume I'm talking about radio, okay, your radio station. So I realized that it takes all kinds of people to make a world, and there's all kinds of personalities. You have assertive personalities, you have passive personalities and such. One of the first things that I do with my clients when I work with them is I tell them to develop a company guideline or handbook. And there's not a one size fits all for every radio station. And that would cover different things in there. For example, the expectations of each individual, whether it's a board member, whether it's, a volunteer, whether it's an employee. And you want to have the things that are very important. Like, for example, a grievance, okay? Happens all the time. Two people see differently. They see things very strongly. It can get very aggressive, and it can turn out to an all-out fight, and morale can go really low. So, one of the things, for example, that you would want in the handbook, we'll call it just handbook, okay, is how do you want that addressed? Maybe you have one person at the radio station that you want to address all grievances. Maybe you want it done to be by email. Maybe you want it done in person at a certain time. The one thing that you absolutely don't want is getting, especially if you're the company owner, you do not want to be getting texts at 10 o'clock at night that so-and-so is mad at so-and-so, because that's highly disruptive to your life. And you just don't need that. So it's really important to spell out a grievance program. If somebody's unhappy, how do you want to address it? How do you want to bring a mediator in? I am a trained mediator. I have met with, people before. I do community mediation also down in Asheville community as a volunteer. So sometimes you can do mediation when, the two people are willing to try to find common ground. I mean, if somebody is just, let me just say, hell-bent and they are not willing to meet halfway, mediation will not work, all right? So also in that guideline, that employee, when I say employee handbook, you gotta remember I deal with workplace issues. In that handbook, you've got to spell out that you will not tolerate any kind of bullying. And people ask me all the time, well, what's bullying? Bullying is not illegal in the United States, although there's a lot of people out there, prominent people, who are trying to reduce it and try to get it to be illegal. But right now, there's not, in any one of our 50 states in the United States, it is not illegal. And when I get asked, what is bullying? I'll give a couple examples, okay? Like, maybe the station manager reaches out to one person and says, I need you to pass on, we're going to have a short notice meeting presentation. And maybe that person doesn't tell one person because they want them to get in trouble or to be left out. Bullying can be very subtle, and it can also be very aggressive. So it could be physical, it could be mental, it could be microaggressive. There's so many ways that you can bully people by leaving them out, sabotaging their work. That's an example. Where discrimination is protected by the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, which is a federal agency, and that applies when there are generally 15 employees or more. And I realize that there are a lot of volunteers in the radio stations. I understand that. But each state also has laws where if there's under 15 people, they have different procedures and laws that apply to each and every state where they can go to the court and complain of harassment. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission at any time, without anybody approaching them with a complaint, can come in and investigate, even nonprofits. So it's really important in your handbook that you address the rights, that I want to say employee so bad because I'm so employee driven for 30 years, that everybody has the right, to file a grievance. You don't want to ever try to hide that, the fact that they have the right to file a grievance. Bullying, they're not going to be able to get much out of, but a protected status like age, in most states, it's 40 years and older, and some states it's younger. You have sexual harassment, genetics, disability, sexual harassment, retaliation, disability. And I don't have them all down. Race, also race, very important. So you have all these different protected statuses. And the thing is that you cannot stop somebody from filing a grievance, whether it's at the federal level with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission or the state, or just going to court and filing charges against you. So it's really important to have everything well documented, and I'm going to get into that. So you want a handbook that is very, very comprehensive and spells out what you expect from each and every person that is volunteering working for the radio station. And it's going to be unique to each and every one of you. You can go online and you can purchase employee handbooks. You can modify them yourself. You can, work with an HR person or somebody that does, that helps develop them. I do them myself for my clients. And another thing that I want to get into is legal employment law. And this is something I was talking to my station manager, Davine Dial, here in Asheville, is that you don't have to go out and spend a lot of money for an employment attorney for legal advice for employment law issues. For myself, I use LegalShield, and I'm not selling you LegalShield. You can go to whoever you want. I'm not affiliated with them. Like if you signed up with them, I don't get bonuses or points or anything. I'm just sharing how inexpensive it is to have an attorney review your employment information, legal questions, issues, incivility going on. Is it actually bullying or is it a protected status class? And then, for example, LegalShield, and there are other subscriptions out there, memberships out there. For example, and I've been with them, my gosh, almost 10 years with my own business. I mean, they will review a lot of your documents. I think it's up to 10 or 15 documents at no cost. They're roughly about $30 a month. It's a $10 fee to join them. And at any time, there's no contract. You can stay with them 1 month. Then you could say, okay, I'm done. And then you can always rejoin them if you want to. And again, I'm not trying to sell LegalShield. I'm just telling you, I use them for my business. And I mean, I'm buying the house that I'm in right now that I'm renting, and they've reviewed all my documents for free on a personal level. And then for an extra $10, which makes it $30, then you can talk to them about small business issues. If you're a big corporation, they wouldn't work with you. So that's one way to save a lot of money and get legal advice at a very affordable price. Okay. So one thing I want to talk about, and this sounds like it's legal, and I will never talk legal because that's you can spend 6 months in jail for practicing law if you're not an attorney. But one of the things that is very, very important that I practice myself is when somebody wants to work with me, I make them sign a non-disclosure agreement so that they will not take my knowledge, intellectual property, run with it and run off and, do the work that I do. And I do that for a reason, because I've had several people, I'm very experienced at this, the work that I do. And I've had people try to hire me with the theme of, oh, I want to know what to do in case I ever get bullied again or discriminated in the workplace. And the reason why I make people sign a non-disclosure agreement is that they can't take my knowledge, run with it, and go out and compete with me. Okay. This has taken me 30 years to learn a lot of things. And I also suggest that to the radio station owners is you may want to create a non-disclosure agreement or a non-compete. You could script it up. You could run it by your attorney. If you have a private attorney, a personal attorney, you could go to LegalShield or any legal source of yourself. Because when I originally worked with the gentleman, the company owner that wanted to get rid of the female who was the nightmare, first question I asked him is there, before we let her go and fire her, and we had plenty of documentation why to fire her, I said, is there anything that she can do to destroy you? And he said, well, she has all my contacts and there's a lot of insider knowledge. And I asked him, well, did you create a non-disclosure agreement? No. I said, well, it's not too late. get a non-disclosure agreement so she can't go out and compete against you, cannot take any knowledge with her. And another thing, in my own non-disclosure agreements, I always put in there, and I make sure they sign it and initial this part, that if they still, if they break any of my non-disclosure agreements, that they are responsible for all legal fees, mine and theirs. And that always gets their attention. Okay, so that's extremely important. And when we did release the girl, fire her, we had to fire her because she was destroying this company. Everything was solid, tight, documented, and that way she was not able to go out and start contacting this guy's contacts, many hundreds and hundreds of contacts, and she could have done so much damage to the business. Because let's face it, sometimes people are not a good fit in a company or a nonprofit or your radio station, and you really truly need to let them go. And the way we did it was in a very respectful way. He actually offered her a few benefits. She was a prior cancer survivor. He offered her 2 extra months of health benefits and a small cash settlement. But that was after she had signed the non-disclosure agreement as such. So I state that, we want to be very careful and very respectful when we let people go, even if they're not a good fit for the radio station. And here's why. Workplace violence is on the rise. And I go to a lot of these conferences, mental health conferences, because I work with a lot of mental health people. And when you look at the statistics of these people who are snapping and shooting people, a lot of them are former employees coming back to a company and they have snapped. It's not that they have mental health issues and they're just, gone crazy. There's all kinds of statistics that there's about 25% of the people who are active shooters that come back and shoot their, former employers and the people in the company. Something has gone wrong. When they do deep studies and research, they find out that person was promised things by HR or the company or whatever, and then they were released and then they snapped. I mean, we don't know why they snapped. They may have lost they may lose their home because they don't have money. So let's talk about also when you make agreements and such. You may have heard the term forced arbitration, where you make a statement, agreement up or a contract with the people who are going to work underneath you, whether they're volunteer, employee and such. So you can sit there and have them write up an agreement, and you can tell them, here's how it is, if there's a grievance, if there's harassment, if there's bullying or something like this, you tell them the procedure that you want them to take if it's in-house. And where people get in trouble, employers get in trouble, companies get in trouble, is when they do a forced arbitration and they tell the employees, in case I know you have volunteers too, that they have to do it all in-house. You can't do that if you discriminate against anybody, because if you make them sign a statement of forced arbitration where it all has to be done in-house and it's found out that it's a protected class of discrimination, then you could get in a whole lot of legal hot water. So it's really important to be careful, to always be straight up front and let people know that they do have the right to file charges. Of course, you want to take care of it immediately and address the issues. And I'm going to talk about documentation. In 2013, I had stood up to the Veteran Affairs, the second largest federal agency, for perceived nepotism, racial discrimination, and it took 20 months, okay? I went through a lot, I lost a lot, and when we got 2 days down to the hearing and we were doing settlements, I was able to settle without signing a non-disclosure agreement, all because of documentation. And that's my strength. And that's my strength that I also teach all my clients. And when I do presentation, is documentation. And a lot of people think documentation is just writing in a little black book that a certain incident happened, and that there's much more to that. What you need to do if there's a problem in the radio station, that everything is addressed, and my preference always is by email. And that's how I was able to hold the Veteran Affairs accountable for all their behavior, settle, and then also agree not to sign a non-disclosure agreement, because I knew I was going to niche in this kind of work. So when you do an email trail, you're always going to be very clear, objective, to the point. You know, if you're reaching out to, for example, two people that are not getting along, you know, you want to spell it out, your expectations, it's not permitted. And if it continues, then you're going to, you know, they're going to be responsible. And that's also something you want in your handbook is what happens if these people continue to be incivil in the workplace, rude, harassing, discriminating, threatening. You know, it's up to you. It's up to you. You know, the first time it might be something so small, so light that you just give them a verbal. But I'm a firm believer in doing this, that you might do a verbal and tell them this is a no-no, you're not going to do it again. If you do this again, we're going to take more serious consequences, or we may have to release you. So a lot of times, you know, people want to talk to maybe a station owner or whoever's a designated person to complain about issues in the workplace. There's nothing wrong with having a one-on-one communication, but I'm a firm believer to document it. And what I mean by that is to turn around with a clarifying email of what was discussed. And it doesn't have to be long. And whether that person acknowledges it or not, you have proven that you have sent an email trail documentation. So if you have to get rid of somebody because they're not a good fit, or they're highly disruptive, or they're doing something that's unethical or illegal, you want to have a documentation trail to show that you have reached out to them, you have discussed what the issues are, that you have the handbook, they have signed it, they know what's expected of them. They can't turn around and say, well, I didn't know that. You know, you want to have everything very tightly documented. And email is one way to show that you did it. If you type up a letter or draft up, you know, Word document, and you spell out, you know, today you had a fight with so-and-so, and that's not expected. Well, you could have that person sign that, and you could keep that on file too. And the thing that is really important is your files, is make sure that your files, or wherever you keep important documentation, is never accessible to anybody but yourself. So I'm going to stop right there. I can go on into more, but I really want to entertain or answer any questions.
Okay, so I could stop recording now, unless, did you have anything else that you wanted to add on, or later? Or
if you're going to talk really personal stuff, it might be good to do a recording. Well, let me back that up. If you want to talk real deep personally things, you know, and don't want to record it, that's just fine. I don't know if it would benefit if it's a recording and then everybody else can listen to it that can't be here. It's totally your call.
Okay, so I'll just stop it here.